I just love to judge people, to condemn people, to put people down. No, I really try to avoid it, and yet I keep finding it coming back, especially when I disagree with them. And boy, is there a lot for us to disagree about. We can disagree about which news sources we use. We can disagree about who Jesus is, about what he means to us. We could disagree about what God is up to in the world or not up to, or is somewhere else on vacation. We could disagree about so much. What do we do with that? Welcome to The Takeout. I'm Jeremy Williams. I'm the pastor at Community United Methodist Church in North Muskegon, otherwise known as communitychurchumc.org. Thanks for being here. Thanks for sharing in a little time of reflecting on this. So, I want to bring you something a little unfamiliar. I've been talking for a couple of weeks about different titles of Jesus. I talked about Christ and Messiah and Anointed, and I talked about last week Jesus and Emmanuel. Today, Son of Man. And that's a really weird one. It sounds like it just means human, and really it gets translated as human in some places, but it's got a weird meaning. So, let's just say, to sum up, right at the beginning, let's just say, Jesus actually likely had a connection to a kind of a cult of Jews that believed that the end of the world was imminent, that Elijah was going to come and tell people to repent and straighten up. And that turns out to have been John the Baptist, and then a guy named Enoch, straight out of the Old Testament, who's been living in heaven all this time, is going to come back and judge the world and establish a new kingdom. Now, if I told you that story, you would likely think that Jeremy has gone around some crazy bend and is in need of some help, and maybe I'll switch over to some other preacher next week. Because these are not the things I normally talk about. These are not my normal things. I don't talk about end of the world kind of judgment stuff. I don't talk about fulfillment of prophecy. I don't talk about, any of that. And it freaked people out in Jesus' time, just some people. And some people thought, yeah, this is exactly who he is. This is what's going on. And then some people thought, we should kill you, because those are crazy thoughts. It's kind of like our own world, where it seems that there are two political parties, and people on the far side of one party can't even agree on anything with the people on the far end of the other party. And there might be some people who are closer to the middle, but they're sure keeping quiet these days. It's all about the people out here. How do we get here? And how do we learn to have a conversation that crosses those lines? How do we even begin? How did it begin in Jesus' time? Well, they began by killing Jesus. So, the story is it's in the Gospel of Mark. It's in chapter 14, and starting around verse 53 and going down, he's having a trial in front. It's an illegal trial in the middle of the night. Talk about a kangaroo court. They're having this trial, and Jesus is on trial, and they're bringing all these witnesses saying he said this, he did this, he did this, and they all disagree, and it's all a little awkward, and there's not, a lawyer for the defense or anything. It's just Jesus, but really it's Jesus, so I guess he's okay. But the high priest stood up before them and said to Jesus, "Don't you have an answer? What are they testifying against you?" And he didn't answer them. He was silent. And again, the high priest asked him, "Are you the Messiah?" "Okay, Messiah." That's a word that the high priest was not okay with. That was not a word out of his tradition. He didn't like that. He didn't go for that. But if you say you're the Messiah, that's cool. Then we've got you claiming to be a king. We take it to the governor and get you put to death. Easy. Are you the Messiah and the Son of the, he says, the Son of the Blessed One, the Son of God? And Jesus says, I am. Now, talk about offensive answers. That was an offensive answer because he just said, oh, God is me, by the way. That's the name of God. And every time someone says, I am, in that context, they are saying, yeah, I'm basically God. And Messiah and Son of God, if you like. Yeah. And then he says this, and, quote, you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of the power. This is not a quote that's in the first 5 books of the Bible, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. It's not in there. And those are the only 5 books that the high priest would have accepted. Only those 5. And Jesus quotes from something that is not even in our Bible. It's not a prophet, it's not the Psalms, it's not nothing. It is the book of Enoch. And just by quoting from it, Jesus put himself in a box of people we profoundly disagree with about everything. It's like showing up at the Catholic Church and telling them that you believe everything that the Jehovah's Witnesses say. I mean, and they look at you like, you're not allowed to believe that stuff. It's actually a lot more like showing up and saying you're a Seventh-day Adventist because they've got a real thing, a love of prophecy from Daniel and from Revelation. They love that stuff. And he says, I'm going to quote to you from a book you don't agree with at all, to which you give no authority, and that book is only read by a group over here that you profoundly disagree with, that thinks that you don't have any right to be the priests, and sees the world differently from you, and it says you're all going to get destroyed, and I'm from God. You will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of the power. Now, you didn't know that when you read the passage sometime years ago. Maybe you were wandering through the Gospel of Mark and you came across this power and it just went, phew, because it didn't mean anything. It meant something to them. It was a signal. It was a signal. I'm kind of connected to the Essenes. I kind of believe that everything in the temple is corrupt. I kind of believe that you guys have no legitimacy. And, oh, by the way, I'm sent from God to change the world. And they look at him like, oh my God, except you're not. What if I find out that Jesus believes all this end of the world, wrath of God type stuff? What if I find out that that all the Jesus meek and mild teacher of gentle thoughts is not a complete picture of Jesus, but I really have to revise my picture of Jesus to include a guy who totally confronts authority, who totally disagrees with him, who believes things that I've never heard of. What if I have to revise my whole picture of God, my whole picture of Jesus, to something like that? I hate that. I find that really messy and really troubling. What do I do? I better make room for it in my heart. And I better then figure out how I filter all the stuff that's coming at me. You know what I mean? If I'm on Facebook, then Facebook decides what I'm interested in and sends me more stuff that I'm interested in, right? But what if one day Facebook decided, well, they kind of tried to do this, but it didn't work so well. What if Facebook decided, I'm going to send you all stuff you don't agree with? And then you're just going to get mad. all the time. And you're going to be conflicted with it. And you're going to disagree with everything coming at you. Well, maybe it would have a benefit of forcing me to enter into conversation with people who don't think like me. And Lord knows, in 2020, there are millions of people who don't think like you. There are millions more who don't think like me. And we are immensely bad at disagreeing. We condemn one another, we judge one another, we criticize one another, we plot against one another. There's these people and there's those people, and we don't talk. Yeah, that's the world Jesus found himself in. It was a religious division that was huge, where people couldn't get along at all. And he claimed all these things about himself. Well, every time he said the Son of Man, and he meant himself, he was owning up to a whole tradition that the high priests hated. What do you do when you find that Jesus is buying into, apparently, a tradition that's different than your expectation? I want to introduce you to a word. It's epistemology. Epistemology means how you decide what to believe, how you decide what's true, what you're going to accept. The high priest in this story had already decided what to accept. He already had his mind made up. It wasn't just that he had made his mind up about Jesus. He had made up his mind about his sources of truth. He had made up his mind that he was only going to accept those first 5 books of the Bible. He had made his mind up. He was not going to ever question the value of his current king, Herod. He was not going to change his thinking about these things and those things. He was 100% bought in to where he was and could not bend. And Jesus comes in and says, oh, and I'm totally the opposite of you, and I think all these things that you find unacceptable. And the high priest had nowhere to put that. I mean, Pilate tried a lot harder. Pilate said, this is the Roman governor. Pilate said, what is truth? Is mine the same as yours? What is truth? And Jesus figures out that Pilate is on a pretty good path here. He's moving closer to truth because he's willing to ask. He's willing to question his assumptions. Maybe in our own time, we should be questioning the news stories we're reading, checking out the sources. Why am I reading Breitbart? Why am I watching MSNBC? Why am I taking this side? Because the side I'm choosing so often predetermines the truth I'm willing to buy into after I've done reading or watching. Wow. We have already taken sides. And we've already taken sides about Jesus too. We've decided for the most part in American Christianity, and especially right here in the sort of middle, Methodism, Presbyterians, and so many other folks, we've decided Jesus is nice, and Jesus is not scary, and Jesus is kind and gentle. And we've decided these things. And then I don't have a place to put Jesus who says, and I'm showing up on the clouds of heaven and judging the world in accordance with a crazy out there prophecy that you don't even accept. And Jesus comes in saying those other things. Now, do I, as a Christian in 2020, accept Jesus saying those things? Do I have to then think about, where's the truth in this? Where's the thing I can accept? For me, I do have to do that. I think to be an honest Christian, I have to say, yeah, Jesus seems to have really bought into this Son of Man idea, and that means he was familiar with the Book of Enoch. He was connected to an Essene tradition. Okay, that's not my tradition. I don't know it real well, but he seems to have bought into it. Now, how can I make sense of Jesus better, more truthfully? Because that's what I want. I don't just need truths that reaffirm everything I was already thinking. That's what the high priest wanted. But what I need in this story is the truth about Jesus. If I affirm that Jesus is my Savior, Jesus is the one I believe in, the one I want to follow, then I have to be looking pretty hard and say, how can I take a judging Jesus and fit him into my world? How can I take a Jesus who believes in the fulfillment of prophecy and this weird end of the world story and make that part of my faith? I can. I have to say, yes, Jesus actually does have expectations. And no, my expectations are not always the same. Jesus does have truth to give me, and I am not always willing to accept it. And Jesus really does intend to change the world. And Jesus really does want me to straighten up and fly right and be better and be more just and be more generous. Jesus really does want all those things. And that is not something I can let go of. What are you willing to accept? What are you willing to stretch and include? What new truth are you willing to buy into? Buying into a different picture of Jesus is really challenging. It's really hard. And this title, the Son of Man, is just an invitation. Just go ahead and search for Son of Man in the Bible. You can do this on Google or wherever. Look for Son of Man and you will find so many places that that seem to say things that are troubling about Jesus. Wow. What do we do with that Jesus who is different from our expectations? What do we do with Jesus who judges? I have to accept Jesus for who Jesus is. And if Jesus comes with legitimate judgment and criticism, and Jesus really does represent the will of God coming to the world, then I need to open myself to that. I don't have to be a preacher who preaches about prophecy every day. I can preach about justice. The weird thing about our world is that we're not even willing to hear people talk about justice, to talk about fairness, to talk about ways we need to continue changing to become what God has in mind. And that's a real shame. We have become the high priest. We have become the bad guy in this story if we don't open ourselves to what God keeps saying to us again and again through Jesus, the Son of Man. God bless you.